my lighting set up a little bit here, and I'm make sure I've got my document pulled up.
Josh, are you good today, Josh?
Man, I am golden. I just got back from a men's retreat.
Man, and you know what, Josh? Let me tell you something. I'm seeing the actual limitation of how I pray, and I'm like, God, what am I doing? What am I missing by my understanding of prayer? Why don't you come in and do bigger than I can think?
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm 47, right? So I'm not young, I'm not old. And I've had so many things backwards, but thank God I'm starting to grasp some really important things. So
good.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Today's show is Civility Unscripted, and we've decided that would be a very good term to use for our show. And each week we will delve into different matters concerning civility. And today we're just going to talk about the general outline of our show, Civility Unscripted. I want to welcome you to this forum where we talk what we walk, and it's all for your benefit and ours. And so we see ourselves as modeling civility in the things that we do here, in the conversation and the dialogue that we have. And we want you to join in and see how this can happen in your lives as well. And so before I get started, I'll just go around and let each person introduce themselves. We're missing one today, but we've got Dr. Clyde. So Dr. Clyde.
Hey, I'm Dr. Clyde Rivers. I'm one of the lead voices of World Civility. And man, just an honor to be on this show.
Yeah,
Joshua Bach.
Josh Bach here, excited to be a part of these conversations and the directions that we go. My background is in media and being able to capture stories of miraculous things and wonderful things in the community that can help bring to light so that we can learn from it. We could talk about it. We could have dialogue and grow from it.
Great. And so glad to have you here on this episode of Civility Unscripted. And I want to start out with just a general conversation about this process that we call civility. Dr. Clyde, you're the world champion of civility. What do we mean when we say this basic term? Because I think we use some of these terms a lot of times and we don't really have a grasp of what they really mean in depth. So what are you talking about when you talk about civility?
When I talk about civility, I talk about basically kindness and respect for every human being alive. Because my belief is that 7.8 billion people in the world are called to help each other. And if we learn how to value the currency in people, we have an actual better world. One thing I often say, Carlin, is this. I said, there's not an economic famine, there's a gift famine. The individual with the gift doesn't have access to the opportunities, and that creates the opportunity for incivility to come. And I'm talking, when you talk about 7.8 billion people around the entire world, there are people whose gifts we need. And that's why kindness and respect is my narrative for world civility, for every human being.
Yeah, I want to kind of segue off of that because you brought up this one key word. You talked about the currency of it all. And in our previous episode, because when we start talking about value, these words all sound like things that are in this thing we call an economy, because you talk about value and you talk about worth and all these things. And we talked about currency. And so, Josh, this one is on you because you're Mr. Money Man for us. When we talk about this currency thing, let's kind of bring us back up to speed what we're talking about, because you made some very good points at the end of last week's episode that was so good. So talk to us about this currency when we talk about civility.
Well, the dialogue that I see opening up right now amongst our circles and beyond is breaking down what money is, what money isn't, and what currency is and what it isn't. And I think being able to really start breaking down the emotional connections that we've maybe been formulated, from when we were a little child and all the way up of what it is and what it isn't, and how many emotions that we have on the scarcity front and on the abundance front. But then how many gifts and tools and treasures and talents have we been giving and that we're formulating and sharpening our sword on, that we can provide to add value to other people. And when we talk about dialogue and the ability to listen and to be able to to look at a different perspective and have that ability to hear them out and learn from it. And we are better together, and we all have these different tools, talents, and treasures. And when we can add them into a group and an environment that is open to that dialogue, man, the sky's the limit what we can accomplish.
And so we're talking about then that value. So is that currency? What is that currency that leads me to value people so much? What is that currency?
Well, where do you start? I mean, I think you got to really explore. In order to find out, you need to observe and listen and have respect for another to identify and help understand what they're bringing to the table. And I think when you talk about the currency of a relationship, no matter if that's husband and wife, whether that's friends, I mean, you name it, the relationship, each of us brings something to the table. We bring a currency to the table, and it's that exchange that takes place that allows for that relationship to be beneficial to all parties.
That's very good. And Carter, when you walk into any room with a group of people, there's a currency of influence in the room. Someone's going to be leading. Someone's going to be one that's analytical. Someone is going to be emotional. So there's a currency of influence that actually dominates every room. It's a person with a higher vibration of something. They can dominate any room, and that to me is a currency that's important in understanding what we're talking about here with civility.
Okay, so all right, so your keywords there, and I love them. The exchange. You talked about the exchange, Josh, and you talked about the process. Okay, so when we're talking about the exchange and we're a process, let's take a scenario and let's see how that exchange looks in that process, and let's see. Maybe because I think, Dr. Clyde, you identified one form of currency. You talked about influence in the room. Let's take a process and let's kind of walk through and see if there are some other currencies that we can identify and how the exchange happens. All right. So, I had a men's group meeting this past weekend, and we brought together different demographically based churches, and we were trying to come together, and we're saying we need to get people who don't normally relate to each other, who don't associate with each other. We bring them together, and we did what was called a men's unity breakfast. So when I look at what happened there and I see the results, because that's why I was kind of late today, because I met with them for an after action to talk about what happened at that event, the process that took place, and the biggest thing that happened where it was the exchange. And so we were talking to them about what they got out of the event, and more than anything, so we talk about influence. They were there, and as we had the discussion, then one guy, because it was supposed to just be more of a forum where we talked to them, one on them, but one guy after another began to stand up and say, want to have their personal story of why this was so good for them for the unity. So I'm looking at that when you talk about the process and the exchange that happens. If we don't, we have something that we have to get out. It's almost like we all have that. And I think when that is suppressed and the exchange does not take place, then you're not in an economy that works because there's no exchange taking place. And so I see that as the value of having the exchange. How have you all seen that in your different areas, exchange happen?
If you don't mind, I see those events as good and shallow. Because as I first meet you, I'm not open up to you. I'm gonna so
exchange is not happening. Is that why you're not open?
No. Exchange is happening, but I don't trust you. I don't know you. So I'm coming in with my stuff. They're coming in with their stuff. So it's almost like it's an actual introductory to economy, to economics. I'm coming in as an intro because these people have a history. I have a history. They have a perception of me. I have one of them. So in the beginning, I believe our currency is just basically testing the water. Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what comes to mind is the opposite of chaos is order, and I know that however big the room is, where there's 2 people in there, or 100 or 1,000 or more, you need some leadership to be able to help create that culture, that environment, to where you can guide through what is your mission? Do we have an agreed upon mission of this room? We have an agreed upon mission and a desire, that shared vision of where we want to go with this, where we want to move this thing forward, and being able to, as a leader of a room, someone appointed to that role. We're all leaders in our own way, but we're playing our roles within that conversation, within that room. And I think somehow along the way, if we could figure out a goal, we're in this room for a reason. Do we agree upon this reason? And then how can we navigate through this?
Okay, well, let's think about that. So sounds like to me, based on like what you both said, because you're saying that just because we're in the room does not mean the exchange or the process has actually taken place. And so perhaps we are then pondering, it's kind of like we go into a store and I'm trying to decide, am I going to exchange my currency for this product that is being sold in the store? And so I think when we say, and Dr. Clyde said, I think it's shallow, that means that there hasn't been enough done to make the sale so that the exchange takes place. Is that what you're saying, Dr. Clyde? There's not enough done, because when the exchange takes place, then that means I've offered some currency and I've gotten something back.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, in that room, there is no trust, there's hope. We hope we have good dialogue. We hope. Then me, I'm not going to open up my whole world with people that are new. So as I step in, I test the currency. I'll talk, but it takes a depth of relationship to actually really get an individual to speak about real heart matters.
Well, is that an investment? Is that okay? So it's kind of like you're saying it takes a depth. If I invest, it's about how deeply, I guess, you invest. Because can I invest and say, okay, I'm going to risk it all on this? It's like, I don't know if you gambling or whatever. I'll invest everything I've got to see what kind of return I get back. Is that possible? That perhaps maybe it's up to you and your investment. It's kind of like this. I was talking to someone this past week, and they were saying this person doesn't love me, and I was like, how much have you shown love to them? So did you make an investment? And then we look at the return. And I think when we have an investment and the return, I'm thinking that's part of the exchange. Is that not a way to see it?
Yeah, yes, part of it. But see, let me tell you, when I talk about depth of stuff, I've been a part of unity, feet washings. Let's come together. We come together. We do an event. The event comes and goes, and we go back to our own lives. Mm-hmm. And so that to me was a deposit, but not necessarily enough for a withdrawal.
So the exchange didn't happen. There was a deposit, but no withdrawal.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I think it's the set expectations too, as far as what would we want to accomplish, and if I mean, it's very possible. We've all been in the room where we set expectations for this room. There's no way we're going to accomplish this in an hour, 2 hours, 3 days even. But I think along the way, it's being able, what tools and talents, or what tools and activities that can we take away from that, so that we can hit the ground running when we get back into our own spaces, a different room. And how is that going to be different the next time we meet in that room? Can we build upon that and accomplish those goals? But I couldn't agree more with you, Dr. Rivers, on the idea of if we don't have those set expectations, if we don't experience, if I'm going to an event and I don't get what I had the expectations of receiving, I'm going to walk away, deflated, or I may walk away with a little bit of, rah-rah, and then go back and nothing changes.
72 hours after 72-hour motivation. Go to a great conference. Wow, going to change everything. 72 hours. And you know what? But I do think it's again, if it's different cultures there, I think it actually does something. I think it actually helps people that have been in one culture only begin to like break the ice with other people if it's genuine kindness there.
So there's a certain sense that where, okay, this might not be as deep as we would like, but it is exposure. It is outside of your normal bounds. And so there could be maybe we're making the point that to get there, you have to take the first step, and there may be incremental steps. And so maybe it all doesn't happen at one time. So,
I most certainly agree with that because we're talking, I like what Josh said. What's the objective? If the objective is a long-term relationship, we made a great start. If it's an event that's coming next week and we come together to build something, that's a quick deposit. That's a quick deposit, and hopefully for a big return. So I think the expectations are vital, are critical, because if we don't know what we're talking about, and most times people that enter into to conversations that go off, there's no expectation for the conversation. Someone says something, it triggers something. Someone says something, and it triggers something, and you're off. How many times have you been caught off guard with a conversation? And man, and your emotions come real quick, and you go, man, if I would have had one more second, man, I wouldn't be feeling this bad right now about stuff.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. And one of the things we talk about this this process that we're talking about in civility. We talked about, and Dr. Clyde, you always allude to this, creating a new narrative. And so in the previous episode, we talked about some key words here that I think are part of a new narrative. And so let's talk about those for a second. You had one, Dr. Clyde, called perception deception. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Perception deception.
Yeah, it's almost like the image we've lived under for so long has created a set pattern in us. So if I see something that looks like this, my mind automatically goes there first. And the individual doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. So they have to work out of the box I put them in my own perception.
Outstanding. Perception deception. Joshua Bach, you talked about this. Give us the story of this, about this currency, this counterfeit currency, and how we are trying to pass on currency that we've received from others. Brilliant point from our last episode, and I want you to cover that again for us, please.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of take us back a little bit, we were talking about the idea of someone going to a store with counterfeit money in the form of an exchange, and then all of a sudden, either that's kind of like the old maid, and that bill gets placed into the system and then gets dished out to someone else, or they're going to identify that this is counterfeit. And then I think that it was a beautiful conversation that we had, because then it was like, well, what if Dr. Rivers, that handed that $100 bill, that $20 bill, didn't know that it was counterfeit? They received the old maid, and then lo and behold, he's looked upon as being the criminal. And how are you going to feel if you're in that situation? First of all, that money's no good there. It's no good anywhere. So that person lost. And then secondly, how many fingers are being pointed? And I think a lot of times if all the different actions and thoughts and ideas that we have in our life, how many times have we been given the counterfeit money, and we're just going about life just exchanging this in the form of in that form of exchange, and lo and behold, it doesn't have the value.
That is amazing. That's amazingly profound, because I think, and that is the essence of, I think, so many of our lives, where we think we're passing off something that has value. Little do we know that it has no value in the current economy that we are in, whether it's in our marriage, whether it's our business relationships. In this particular economy, what you've been given has no value, and we continue to try to pass it off. So just really good. One of the things that we talked about last week, and we came up with that term we want to talk about a little bit, about the civility ability. Civility ability. What does it take for people to have the ability to begin this process, to be a part of this process, or to enact some of these principles that we're talking about? Does everybody start with a civility ability equal?
I think this is just with my experience around the world. I think it's the equation of outcomes that are important, and I'll paint the picture with what I'm saying there. Sometimes when we start things, there's an unrealistic expectation. So people expect things to be perfect, and when they're not, they're disappointed. So I think the one thing we have to look at is, how do we tell people this is what is a win in our dialogue? Our win isn't when we're both there crying, hugging, or a win is when I get a chance to speak what are my views on it, and you get a chance to speak yours, and we're at opposite ends of the pole, and we're still okay with each other. So I think the expectation is critical in what kind of dialogue, what like civility dialogue really is, because what I see is just false expectation. It's going to be perfect now that we talk, or he's listening to me, or she's listening to me. And when you hear someone, you say, that's great, I still don't agree. That's when a lot of times anger happens anymore. But I listened to you all the way through. So I think we have to really set a stage of what's the expectation of a civility conversation. Does that make sense, gentlemen?
Yeah, and I think it's so fresh in my mind because I just came back from a roundtable meeting where we, you know, because we talk about a lot of ideas about having those emotions and those triggers, and sometimes those happen in words. I mean, you take a word, and there could be 10 people in the room, and everyone has kind of the different viewpoint of what that word is. And the one word that came up in this discussion was entitlement. And just what that means, what it doesn't mean, how it means something to other people. And it got a little heated at first, just trying to define between, the room of what that means. And I think all of us could see, to some degree how that could fit. But the beautiful part about it is it created an opportunity for us to listen to each other and to hear, the viewpoints and allow for each of us to have significance on this particular topic. And I think it just posed as a great example for everyone in the room that we can talk about some of those heated trigger topics and show each other that we can get through it and walk away with a better understanding. And just, if anything, it's kind of like that attaboy. We got it. We accomplished something there. And I think it's hundreds and thousands of those types of moments, if we approach it in that desired outcome of civility for all, then we're able to not only show ourselves, but show others, because we're all at different levels of understanding with that. And like all things. So it is our job and duty to be able to have those discussions and show that it can be done.
Yeah. And as we show it can be done, it doesn't mean that we're hugging and kissing at the end. And I think people have
wait.
false
Is that not okay to hug and kiss at the end? Is that outlawed? No hugging and kissing
in some countries. What it is I think if you're really looking at having a healthy dialogue with someone that you're at opposite ends with, it'll be amazing what the outcome is. If you both need to see change and you both have to communicate, and it's amazing what kind of processes take place when people are under the gun. When our dialogue means life or death, what now? Does that make sense, Josh?
Well, not only does it make sense, I think it opens up further discussions on it, because how many times are we in business situations or political situation, government situations, that it is absolutely necessary that we need to get through this. And if we don't get through it, we're going to be in big trouble, or someone's going to get fired, and I think if it doesn't come from within, if it doesn't come from a genuine desire to actually grow, and it's forced, then I think we are going to be in situations where we may perform, we may go through the motions when we're all together, but as soon as we head out towards the door and we head back to our world, we know it was a creation. It was we were up on stage, we were performing, and so that authenticity, that desire, that genuine desire that each of us come to the table with, if we're fixed with an idea of a solid, positive growth outcome on it, man, it'll be the difference between going through the motions or actually having significant change.
Man, and you know what? That's great, Josh. And Carlin, people are tired of mark the box meetings. People are tired of let's do this meeting, let's do this interview so we can mark the box. So there has to be some authenticity in the equation that we're bringing, and it has to be true change, like with the NFL coaching scenario right now, about African-American coaches not being hired, getting interviews. This is Like if there's a mark the box meeting, let people know. If there's no genuine cause in wanting to do it, it's easier if you know upfront than build false expectation. And that's just one example that's happening now. But there's other things where, as you start in, the average person knows it's not real. So it's a consequence of going through the motions and hoping. And see, this here is what creates so many problems is when it appears to be something and it's not. That takes people to like different emotions. It creates different things. And one of the things is when you have a history of something, man, it's easy to go back to the history and say this here was this or that and this.
It breaks trust.
Yeah,
breaks
that's what
trust.
it does. That's what, and you know what? The hardest conversations that you have is with someone that has an actual trust broken. Man, you have to make so many love deposits, so many positive deposits to get them to even allow you to make a withdrawal.
So I'm hearing this on a very personal level as we talk about this. I think this has application on so many different scales, and definitely a much larger scale, because if you contemplate what's happening right now between Ukraine and Russia, it's this thing that you just alluded to, that I haven't given you a reason to exchange with me. I haven't given you a reason for us to sit down and offer what I have, and you offer what you have. And so that exchange doesn't take place. And so you hear, and Putin and Zelensky were both talking, hurling their verbal barbs at each other. And I think that's what happens when you don't have incivility, even in our personal lives, when one person is just saying, all I want to do is get out my view and cast my dispersions. Wow. And they're just going one way, and it's all one way, and there's no exchange. There's a lot of things being said to each other. And I think that's sometimes what happens in our personal relationships. Two people are having discussion, but the exchange is not happening because I'm not really valuing, as I sat here and listened, I was listening to Josh, I was listening to Dr. Clyde. And one of the things that we've done as we've evolved in this process, we come in here and it's pretty authentic, because I'm going, well, we're just going to go with whatever you all say. Yeah. And so I have to listen, because if I don't listen, that means we go nowhere. And I think that's the key. And I think it happens at so many levels. And I think that's what's happening kind of around the world today in a lot of places. So Dr. Clyde, I know you're a world traveler. Is this what you see in other countries? The same thing?
I see what I see is systems have formed people's thinking, and really nobody fits into a box perfectly. Mm-hmm. So every country I go to, there's a right and left. There's a tribe or this. And what happens is this: civility has to be a voice that can change the equation too. I had a person that wants to work with me on some projects, and they were like, so tell me about Africa. I said, okay, well, I said, first of all, in some countries, they're like, national government doesn't control the kings. What? There's two governments there? Absolutely. So that was a mindset the person had no clue of how to deal with. And this individual came in with a Western mind. Well, let's do this. And I'm going, well, hang on for a second. Man, I appreciate your enthusiasm. It's beautiful. Man, it's great. But there's a whole nother equation that we have to bring to the table for this to work. And what I came to, Josh, is expectation has to be laid out, and people need a certain amount of information if they're going to really move things forward.
Well, and you've got forced ideologies that, individuals that have power that are forcing these ideologies. Yeah, you're going to have a group of society that out of mere fear of losing their life in many cases, they're going to have to go through those motions. But is there trust there? And can we be productive if we have that forced ideologies without that collective idea of how to get through, name the problem?
Can I give you another thought that I think on this? I think every country has three generations in one: the old generation, the middle, and the young generation. And all three of these generations think differently. So you have to factor in, it's possible to live your whole life in your own generation. What does that mean? You have friends that you grew up with, you still like the same music of the day, you still talk about this. And then when you look at the young generation, I can't believe what these young kids are doing today. And I'm going, man, that's just a generational divide, a generational gap, a generational thing that causes a lot of division and strife when this is how I grew up. Well, that's great, but there's two other generations underneath you now. And have you had enough civility to actually talk with them and see where they're coming from, or opposed to looking at your hard fixed paradigm that they don't fit in?
Well, think about so you got the generational divide. You've got, it sounds like when we start talking about all of these, both the cultural aspects, the generational aspects, there's so many other things. It seems like when people boil things down to something simple, like, and say people of that color, or people that look like that, or even we just say people of this ethnicity, there's so many other complicated things about people, about how they were raised and they were brought up, which might be inside or outside of the culture. Just like when you see what they say is the Asians have a culture. When they're in America, then they're part of a different type of culture, Asian American culture, which might be different than their Asian culture. How much of their original culture do they leave behind? How much do they accept here? And so you got that with every person in every household, in every family, based on how many people are in the family. And once you drill down, we're all human beings, and it becomes very complicated then when we start making these assigning group labels to certain people and saying this is part of. I was reading a book recently because we're having some discussions online about this, and the book was entitled "The Death of Culture," and it was talking about there's going to be this point, and it was started with the definition of culture, which was a book written by T.S. Eliot many years ago. And so, but most recently they've been talking about the death of culture, because he was talking about there was going to be a day coming when it was going to be so mixed and so many different things converging, all those things that we were talking about, all those things converging, that you really you can't look at a person and say that's their culture, because there'll be so much intermingling and intermixing and things like that. And I think that's what we're saying. And so we don't know how to adapt to that. And so that's going to be a challenge for us in relating to other people.
Man, can I give you another Dr. Rivers that I've seen? Culture, say the three generations in one. The ones in the new generation have no active revelation of mind. They
like your music, though. They like your music.
Yeah. Their experience of their life doesn't allow them to have a true feeling of what we grew up with in our day or time. So it's almost like I had a kid tell me one time about Dr. King. He said, he goes, I think Dr. King fell. And I'm like, man, but he didn't understand that time period of what gains were made. And he said that we're still fighting the same things. And this is important with civility, because we have to hit the hard issues. But we have to say, great, it's okay for you to have that view, but how can we walk together and not damage each other? This is where every workplace that has multicultural, every workplace that's diversity, there's gonna be deep-seated culture in everyone working there, because it's where they grew up. So the power of civility is, how can I work with you with our differences and we move the needle forward? That's the ultimate objective that we're looking for with civility for all. I can treat you with kindness and respect and don't have to agree with the words you say, or you with one word I say. I can say, great, I actually respect the humanity in you enough to say, great, if that's your experience, it's true to you.
I think we need to get t-shirts that say differences.
Go ahead, Josh.
And I think it's important to note too, that adds right onto that, what you just said, Dr. Rivers, is that it takes strength to create a strong environment of civility, to listen to one another, to actually compute in your mind, to be able to see that there may be a different way to do things. It takes great strength to do that. And it's like a muscle, like it's something to where you just have to work on and build on. And I think somehow along the way, when we look at our society does not place a lot of value on the people that bring civility and bring unity amongst people. And if somehow along the way, if we don't place that value, how many missed opportunities do we have to build those muscles? Because we do build upon that as an individual, and then collectively as a group with our household and with our neighbors and so on and so forth. But that can be taught, and although it's not easy, it's doable, and it's something that we can absolutely build upon. And I think when we see it happen, it gives us the emphasis to be able to place a priority on that, to continue building that. And when we do, we can change the environment, whether it's a small room and then moving into a larger room on a macro level.
Very good. Yeah, you talked about the value of connecting, the value of connection, and how we get there. All right, so we're about to close out the show, so let's talk about that.
Carter, let me give one other. I think part of the issue that's impacting our world now is when the actual younger generation have had more experience with other cultures now. So when I have experience with actually you, it can break different like stereotypes. As you have encounters with different people, like as an athlete, as I played sports, man, some of my dear friends grew up in places that I have never even stepped foot in, but that's my dear friend because we did something together. And I think where our big change is coming is our younger generations have had more encounters with like different cultures, different people. So there's becoming a better understanding of human beings. And that to me is a key part of civility is to have when you've had encounters with people that are different than you, man, and you understand that it really makes you better. When man, if I can compound knowledge from everyone, man, I have a better chance to make a good decision.
Yeah, from what I've heard from both of you, you're saying civility obliterates the boxes that people have conveniently placed us in. And so we are able to then just see people for who they really are. I mean, and that's the key, I think. And so that supersedes all the other boundaries that have been placed on people over the years, over the generations. And so civility does that, obliterates the boxes, and we can start dealing with people as humans and relating to them that way. Then, and only then, can we have the exchange that civility calls for. And I think that's great. All right. Any other closing comments, guys? Great discussion today.
Every time we talk, every time we listen to each other and work through conversation, I walk away stronger. And I want to thank you guys for all of these opportunities.
No, man. And I appreciate this because I think we're giving people a reality. It may never go your way, but if it goes the way to help mankind, the better off we are and the better our generations to come.
That's outstanding words. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Civility Unscripted. Dr. Clyde Rivers, Joshua Bach, and me, Carlin Charleston. We thank you for your time today.